morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, our new webinar on Contractors Insurance Made Easy. And I want to introduce myself, Anae Agostini. I'm CEO of CID Insurance Programs. And Teresa Cochran, who's our commercial underwriter and handles all the contractors insurance. And then I want to introduce a special person who's going to be our instructor for the webinar. That's Andrea House. She's an underwriting manager for music, which is a carrier we represent and love to do business with. And then last but not least, Jacob Cole, who's our marketing specialist, and he's behind the scenes making sure that everything goes smoothly for all of us. So let's get started. There's a few logistics to talk about. And many of you, if you've not been to our webinars, but since there's so many people participating, everyone will be muted. You'll be able to hear but not speak, but your voice is really important to us. So we really want you to pose questions in the chat room and do it any time throughout the webinar. And we'll be, myself, I'll be watching for those questions to come in, and then we'll have Andrea answer those questions as we go along through the webinar. And then afterward, there'll be a short survey, and we, again, would like your feedback. So let's get started. I want to introduce Andrea House.
Thank you so much. So good morning, everybody. I am Andrea House, and as she mentioned, I am the Northwest Underwriting Manager with Music, which is one of the carrier partners with CID. So thank you so much for joining us today to have this discussion around contractors. So just a couple of objectives to give you an idea of what we'll be covering today. Our goal is to help you identify and understand the various types of contractors that are available to write. It's also important to know the proper underwriting criteria for all the different contractors and to recognize which coverages are appropriate for each risk and how to rate them effectively. So just a little piece of information that you may or may not know about contractors. So contractors have been and continue to be a largely growing industry. It's actually one of our music's largest piece of business across the board, and that segment has grown tremendously with us over the years. To give you an idea of what the growth looks like, in 2019, which has already passed, and I don't have the final number yet, but it was projected that the total construction spending forecast was thought to be around $1.3 billion. And 2020 has been projected to grow to the $1.4, $1.5 billion in total construction spending. And that has come a long way from just around the $1 billion it was in like 2016. So definitely a growing industry, and we're seeing it here with our partners with CID and with music. So moving on, the first thing we want to start with is just the types of contractors, and they can really be started broken down just by the two main categories, which is an artisan contractor and a general contractor. So let's take a look at both of those a little bit more in detail. Artisan contractors are identified as specializing in one or two types of artisan trades, usually less than 5. And some of those trades can include painting, drywall, plumbing, flooring, and so on. The majority of the work performed will be by the owner and or the owner's direct employees. And subcontracted costs are typically less than 40 to 50% of their total operation. Artisan contractors may be engaged in commercial, industrial, and residential new construction and remodeling work. Here's some important underwriting criteria for the artisan contractors, and it'll look very similar to the general contractors as well. So as I mentioned, they can be engaged in commercial or residential construction, which can be new construction or remodeling services. The rating for these types of risks are based on payroll and subcontractors' costs. New ventures can be entertained, but it's typically preferred that the contractors also have work-related experience if they are a new venture. Risks with no prior coverage or a lapse in coverage are available, but there may be additional requirements depending on the carrier, such as a loss history report, lost runs, or a signed no known loss letter. And then there are exceptions on underwriting criteria and qualifications, and that will vary state to state and by carrier. Here, let's take a look at some of the coverages that are available on the ARTISAN contractors. So we have limits up to the $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate. There's also umbrella coverage available. And as we mentioned earlier, it is rated on that payroll basis and subcontracting costs. Some forms that are available for these risks include blanket additional insured and forms with primary and non-contributing wording, waiver of subrogation, and completed operations and endorsement, and also a designated construction project general aggregate can be used with ARTISANs. Some information about licensed and unlicensed ARTISAN contractors. So it's really important to understand the licensing requirements for them. There are some classifications that may or may not require the C contractor's license, so there's A, B, and C, and this is all going to vary amongst the state and the carrier. It'll also matter whether or not the classification provides services rather than construction work. Some good examples of unlicensed ARTISAN contractors will look like businesses that do janitorial work, that mow and blow, pool cleaners, maintenance work. And it's really important to understand exactly what type of work your risk is performing, and that will help you to write it and place the proper coverage. So I highly recommend taking a look at their websites. That'll usually tell you what they do. I know some of them may not have one, but it's always really important to try to search for them and see what they do. You know, in my line of work, you know, when I visit a website, I'll see a risk come over, and it'll be for like a landscaping guy or a maintenance risk, and that was just all that was on the app. But sometimes if I visit their website, I'll see that they also do snow removal, and music in particular, and maybe some other carriers, we actually exclude that, or with other carriers that need to be rated separately. So it's really important to know what exactly the type of work that they're doing, and that we appropriately rate for that. The other kind of major category is the general contractors. So general contractors typically have that administrative and managerial responsibility for the construction projects, and they have more control over the operations. Contractors they can directly perform some of the construction work, or they delegate construction work through their subcontractors. They also, just like an ARTISAN contractor, will be engaged in commercial, industrial, and residential new construction or remodeling work. So a little bit different from the ARTISAN contractor, at least 40% or more of the operations would be subcontracted out, which was a little bit different than what we listed for the ARTISANs. And it's typically required that they construct 12 or fewer new single-family residences per year or at any one project site. And keep in mind that a duplex is equivalent to 2 single-family residences. And then new construction of condominiums and townhomes is prohibited, and many carriers will also not allow new tract home work. And also a little bit different from ARTISAN contractors is that the general contractor is rated on sales, and then that subcontractor cost as well. So the size on these coverages available for the general contractor is very similar to that of the ARTISAN contractor. So feel free to take a look at it again. But here's just a really great time for me to point out a reminder on how, again, it's important to understand some of the forms available to you. So having a written contract can be extremely helpful and is oftentimes required by the carrier for certain types of coverages and forms that you may want to place with these types of businesses. And also it's really important to have the proper coverages and risk transfers in place with your contractor's risks so that the insured is successful and is protected in the event of a claim. So here's another look at some of the other coverages available. So in writing contractors, you have a variety of options available to you that could be added to the risk. One of them is contractor's equipment, which can cover theft. It provides around $1 million total insured values and $250,000 for any one item. You also have $50,000 available to you for miscellaneous tools and equipment, and then $250,000 for equipment that is rented or borrowed. And then on the right side, an explanation of the inland marine installation coverage. So this is important to consider when covering machinery and equipment for the interest of the owner, seller, or contractor during the course of installation, renovation, or repair. And $500,000 is available at any one job site with this coverage, and $125,000 at any location other than the job site. And when placing this coverage, it's important to make sure that you've confirmed with the insured that the job site should be fenced, it's protected from nuisance and theft, there's really good lighting, and possibly even a security guard on premise. Some other important things to remember when writing contractors' risks include just knowing that the contractor's risks are auditable. So if the payroll, sales, or subcontractors' costs come back significantly different than what was on the original submission, action can be taken by the carrier. And that can kind of sometimes be a surprise for the insured. So, during that discovery phase or having that discussion, it's really important to nail down, again, what exactly it is that they do. Do they use subcontractors, payroll, sales, and then the subcontractors' costs and that sort of thing. And another important thing to remember about contractors' work is poor workmanship is not insurable. The contractor is responsible for the repair of their poor workmanship. However, the resulting damage is covered for the bodily injury and property damage.
And Andrea, I just wanted to mention something. There is a professional liability coverage out there that can close that gap. So those brokers that, are participating today, it's important for them to be able to communicate that exclusion and the need for potentially an additional policy.
Absolutely, really good point to make.
And one other thing I want to chime in on regarding the subcontracted work, it's important to get a certificate of insurance from your subcontractor. If they are not insured, they need to be included under your payroll. I know they're not an actual employee of yours, but since they are not insured, it is important that they do get added to the payroll. That is the correct way to rate for the policy. Otherwise, when it comes to audit time, there's going to be a lot more money due.
Absolutely, that is a really good point there. And again, just with talking about risk transfer, it is really important for the subcontractors to also have that insurance in place. So some other important tips that I can give you in writing contractors include just asking the prospective insured the right questions to really understand their business and type of work. It's a really good idea to visit their website if they have one and talk to them about previous jobs that they've done. Other websites are available to you to kind of figure out if this is going to be a good risk for you or not. Are they a good contractor? So you can visit buildzoom.com for permit history and contractor rating, and these are public websites. And then websites like the OSHA website will provide any violations that they might have. And then another really good point that's extremely important in all areas is just to ensure that the accord forms and supplemental applications are completely filled out. And they do ask those questions about the subcontractors and is insurance in place, hold harmless in place, and so on and so forth. And that'll help you to identify if they need to be listed as a subcontractor or as an employee. Just having those accord forms and supplemental apps completely filled out will help prevent any gaps in coverage for the insured. And it also prevents any barriers to closing the business, since the carrier wouldn't have to come back to the agents to ask for additional information. So there is a few other coverages that are available that go along with this risk, and I'll let Anae chime in to kind of talk about. I know she mentioned professional liability.
Yeah, the professional liability can you can get policies out there that will cover that the poor workmanship, you know, the cost to redo the work. That's a lot of the claims end up being that type of loss. So, and then pollution liability can be either written as a standalone or included on a professional liability policy. And then you have some trades that are really environmental sensitive. So that's another area to consider when you are looking at contractors. And cyber liability is an exposure that contractors do have, and they have employees, so employment practices liability needs to be considered. So, you know, don't forget to make sure that they have all the coverages they need. And most important is to talk to the, as Andrea said, talk to the insured about what their exposure really is. What are they doing? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. You did a wonderful job. We really enjoyed the information that you shared. I hope it was valuable to everyone who attended. If you have any questions, please type them in. We'd be glad to answer them. We're going to be emailing out some tools, you know, application, marketing material, and we'll be sending you a survey as well. Be sure this webinar has been recorded, will be on our website for you to go watch again, or someone else in your office may want to watch it as well as all of our other webinars. Check out the ones that are upcoming. We're doing some new ones this year, and then you can always go back and see, watch all of the webinars that we've done previously in the last year. So Teresa's your contact person for getting your contractors GL in place. So please reach out to her if you have any questions. Otherwise, send your applications in for her to quote. We look forward to doing business with you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.